Hi, in this video we're going to be taking a look at the chorus effect. So as with all of the other videos in the audio effects series, we'll start out by taking a look at the different parameters on the chorus, and then we'll see how it works in a practical environment. So this time out we are working with this track. Okay, so the chorus effect belongs to a family of effects which are called modulation effects, and in there you've also got the phaser and the flanger. And essentially what the chorus is doing is thickening up a sound. It is giving us the impression that there are more versions of a sound playing than there actually are. And it does this by creating, in the case of the Ableton Live chorus, it does that by creating a couple of duplicates, but then it's the actual modulation, it's the movement of what is essentially pitch and panning over time that creates that thickened sound. So let's have a look at the interface. First we can see that we have a delay line here, and I've just got the standard piano preset from Simpler playing here. So we've got one delay line here, and we can hear that in action. If I turn up the delay line to full, you'll see that at its longest point, it's still only 20 milliseconds. So very, very short times that we're dealing with. And I'm just going to take the modulation off of this for a second, and you'll hear that it is just a standard delay. So as I turn the dry wet up, you can hear that sort of flamming sound. So that's the delay, and it's got a feedback parameter, which is giving us the kind of metallic tones that we get when we pull a delay in very, very tight. But of course, the actual real point of this is the modulation, and that all happens in this central section here. And we've got an XY pad, so as we turn this up, you'll hear that not only are we getting a fluctuation in pitch, which is created by an LFO, but actually it's a stereo delay, and the LFOs are both out of sync with each other, so they're going in opposite directions. And so what that's going to do is create the stereo kind of panning effect as well, the same kind of thing as we discovered in the auto filter video, for example. So essentially what we've got along the bottom here is the rate of that LFO, and it's actually linked in the amount parameter here is affecting the delay time. And what that's doing is making the delay time longer and shorter, and we can rapidly modulate that. And that's given us this feel, or this impression, should I say, that the pitch is changing. So we can go from things that are very subtle to really far out and obviously very, very obvious effects. Now also in amongst this we've got the second delay here. In fact, I should mention first for this delay that we do have a high pass. So just put the dry wet all the way to 100%. As we turn the high pass up, we'll hear the low frequencies going out. So we've also got a second delay. The second delay at the moment I've got set to off. This isn't affected at all by the high pass, but if I just put the high pass all the way up, that's effectively going to take delay 1 out of the equation for us at the moment, just so we can hear what's going on with these parameters. So at the minute it's turned to off. I can actually put it onto fixed, and it just becomes a fixed delay. So if we just have a listen to this, again you can hear that flamming, but now it's not affected at all by the modulation. Or we can have it affected by modulation also. One other small button here that you might want to employ is just to link these two together so we get the same delay time coming out of both 1 and 2. So that's also affected by the feedback. This is the entirety of the signal that's getting fed back into itself here. So that's the sort of standard overview of the chorus. Obviously, more subtle effects. Let's just bring this in a second. More subtle effects can be had if we keep our modulation in this sort of lower left area here. Usually no to very little feedback if you want to go with the subtle effect as well. And you probably want to pull in most cases, these delay times. And of course, the reverse is true of that. Go completely extreme with all of the parameters if you want the far out effects. Now, there are a couple of other parameters that we'll look at in a second, but let's actually hear this in action now. So, fairly standard thing to do with the chorus is to add it to a pad, and here's our pad sound. So, I'm just going to grab the chorus, throw it on. Let's have a listen to this now. So you can instantly hear that there's a lot more movement there, both in terms of the stereo field and just the fluctuation of the pad itself. So now let's put that together with the actual other elements in the track. So first time round with the chorus off. And second time with it on. So that's just the standard chorus, literally the default that I've dragged in from the browser there. I'm quite happy with the settings on that, and you can hear, obviously, the other main thing that's going on is the pad's not so up front now. It's being pushed back in the mix, which is essentially, if we're creating lots of different delays of it, it's smearing the transient. So it's becoming less clear to our ears, and that's pushing it back in the mix. It's also wider, which is allowing the other elements to come more to the fore. Which is really what you want from a pad. It's there to pad things out. So I much prefer this with the chorus on. One last thing we could have a quick look at with this, of course, is going to be the feedback. Let's see how that affects this sound. So we can have it going really crazy, or maybe, in order to create a little bit of contrast, let's run with the feedback around there, but we'll only have it kicking in when the track's dropping out, about 33 there. So let's just take it out for a second and see what happens now, the contrast of the feedback at 0 and then at 66% when the kick drops out. So I quite like that, just to solo it, just so we can hear it again. I think that additional movement's quite cool there, so I would probably run with that. Now, let's also have a look at a slightly more intense use of the chorus. So in this drop here, we've just got a fairly standard reverb build. This percussion is just being sent to our reverb here on the C return. So you can hear it building up. So let's try throwing our chorus after this reverb. Now, this is where I'm going to employ this small button down here, which is essentially just a multiplier button. So it's times 20, it's multiplying the rate by 20. But let's have a listen to this. So you might be able to hear that. Let's solo it just so it becomes all the more apparent what's going on. you can hear lots of different sort of textures that can be produced. We can go very, very intense with this, but it's nice to automate this sometimes with the builds as well to get some interesting things going on. So might even put this all the way to wet. Let's just have another listen. Yeah, that's a bit more extreme. Let's run with that, and I'm just going to record in a little bit here, and I'm using a touchpad to do this. It's obviously much better if you've got your MIDI controller, but we'll just run with a touchpad, easy enough to see what's going on. And also, I'll just open these up so you can see what's happening in the actual automation lanes as this is going on. Okay, so let's just have a look here. I'm not sure quite why the LFO rate here didn't come down a bit better. Oh, in fact, actually, it's me. It's just my dodgy movements there with the trackpad getting that wrong. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and drag that out so we get something a bit more natural coming down the other side here rather than it carrying on really high. Might have been better left where it was. Yeah, I prefer something a little bit more gentle like that. Now, obviously, it needs a bit of tweaking, but you can hear the additional movement that we're getting in there on top of the reverb. But perhaps if you were making a more upbeat track, something perhaps kind of electro-based or even dubstep, you might want to go really crazy with that and get some very high energy out of the chorus. So that's the chorus effect and a couple of different uses for it that go, one of them that goes a little bit outside the norm. Almost forgot to mention the polarity actually. Essentially, all that happens here when you change it to negative polarity is it's inverting the signal of the chorus. So what you're getting is the waveform points that were positive will be negative and vice versa. And you can always just give this a try to see if it improves the sound. Sometimes with positive polarity, it's more of a kind of detuned type sound that you get out of it. But really, it's one of those, just flick between it and see if you prefer what you get. Let's have a quick listen with this. So there's a lot of movement on there. It's hard really to hear it doing anything, and personally I wouldn't worry about it in this circumstance. So that definitely is all of the parameters of the chorus covered now, and a couple of different uses for it as well in a track. As always, any comments are welcome. If you haven't been over to the Facebook and Twitter pages, there are regular tips, updates, answering questions and different things going on there. So that's facebook.com/quantizecourses and twitter.com/quantizecourses. Until the next time, take care.